Now, of course, props cannot just be set to string values. And of course, just like other HTML elements, you can bind them to dynamic values. For example, isFavorite currently works with 1 or 0. Now, since we have exactly two values, it would make much more sense that we want a boolean here, so that we make it clear that this should be of type boolean. Then we can also get rid of that validator, because a boolean can only be true or false. There are no other values. The default value then could be false here, so that isFavorite is false by default. But now to pass false, we can't just set this to true or false here. This is not how it works, because this will always be some text here. Instead, to use the true value type, we need to bind this with vbind. And that is something we can do. We can bind our own props just as we can bind any other HTML attribute. And if we got a prop that needs a JavaScript value other than a string, then we need to use vbind, or the shorthand of course, to pass in that value. You can of course still also execute any JavaScript expression here, call a method, or whatever you want to do, but you can also use that to pass non-string values. But being able to bind props dynamically is not just useful for that. It's not just useful to pass non-string values, even though that is useful. But it's also useful to make those components a bit more dynamic. Maybe you forgot about it already, but we have our friends here in an array inside of our app.view file. Now, wouldn't it be nice if we could use v4 again, but now repeat our own component and then pass in the different data for each loop iteration? Well, turns out you can do that. You can use v4 and also vIf, by the way, on your own components, just as you can use it on default HTML elements. So here, I can loop through my friends like this. And now there's just one important rule. You always need to add a key here. I talked about the key before. Keys are important when you deal with v4. When you use v4 on a custom component, adding a key is mandatory. So make sure you add the key prop here. You don't need to specify it in your component. Vue automatically knows what to do with it. Make sure you use it when you use v4 on a custom component. And then here we can bind key dynamically to friend.id, for example. And now we can not just bind key dynamically, but also all the other fields, like name. Here, we can set this equal to friend.name. Phone number, we can set this equal to friend.phone, because that is the field we have here where we store our dummy phone number. And the same, of course, also for email address. Bind it dynamically to friend.email. And for the moment, I'll leave isFavorite as it is. We'll work on that again later. Now we can remove that second usage of friend contact, because now v4 will create multiple friend contact elements on this page, one for every friend in Friends. And we're binding all prop values dynamically to pass in the different data we have for every friend. This of course also means that we now can get rid of that dummy friend we're defining in friendContact.view. We don't need that anymore because we already are receiving all the prop data we need from outside. And we can also change toggle favorite. Since isFavorite is now a boolean by default, we no longer should check if it's 1 or 0. We can simplify this and set this friend is favorite equal to what it's currently not, to toggle it like this and set it to true if it was false and false if it was true. And with all of that, if we now go back, you now see your different data still, but now in two components that are created with v4. Now toggle favorite is not working here. Let's see why that is the case. Yeah, because this check of course is wrong. Since it's a boolean, we should check if it's true or false like this. So if I now adjust this, That now looks better. Now at the moment, both are favorites because I set isFavorite to true here on the friend contact component in general. So for every iteration, we create a new friend contact, but it always has isFavorite set to true. But that is something we'll take care about later. The key takeaway here is that we can use v4, that we can bind those props to dynamic values, and that now we got an even more reusable component, hopefully making it clearer and clearer why components are that amazing.